There's a moment in Andor where everything looks just about perfect. The architecture, the lighting, the staging. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this is gorgeous. This is absolutely spectacular. But then as I sat there and watched as speeder after moment passed and felt nothing. And it didn't move me in the way that I thought it would. Not like the Acolyte did. And I think I finally figured out why. And it doesn't really have anything to do with anything in regards to bias. This isn't about me choosing some side of the fandom. This is about substance over spectacle and how we've conditioned ourselves, often unconsciously, to reward the familiar, even when it fails to nourish us. I want to explore that in today's video, because somewhere along the way we stopped trusting stories that challenge us. We stopped letting ourselves be surprised and curiosity ceased. These aren't small problems. I would say they're relatively large, but there's something poetic in science fiction because it symbolizes something bigger than ourselves and even our own ambition. Here on my new channel the channel that I've rebranded, the Platypus Playground, this is here to help us remember what really matters. And to be frank, it's not the 9 to 5, it's not the 10 plus hours of overtime, and I want to make sure that we understand really what we're losing here. So come along for the ride as we discuss this stuff in a galaxy far, far away. I've always believed that curiosity is sacred. Not just curiosity about our world, but about ourselves, our patterns, our potential for being loved or not wanting love. It's why I was drawn to Bazi astrology. It's a system of fate, but it's also a mirror. One that doesn't just point towards the future per se, but it shows us what can be. The ancients knew this. In Greece, in China, Egypt, astrologers weren't just stargazers. They were truth tellers, pattern seers, and for that, some of them had their tongues removed. Because curiosity, real radical curiosity, is dangerous. It disrupts order. It asks inconvenient questions. It speaks the quiet part out loud. And maybe that's why the Acolyte moved me so much. It didn't just tell a new story. It dared to ask an ancient question. What happens when the pursuit of moral purity blinds even the most faithful? Much like Juliet Nichols in the Silo trilogy, impulsive, flawed, and yet so real. The Acolyte shows us that sometimes the most disruptive voices help us see past the lies we've told ourselves. And in that moment, storytelling becomes something more than just escapism. And so I've asked myself, what if there is no God? What if there is no force watching over us? No prophecy to fulfill, no chosen one to bring balance? What kind of story would that be? And I think Andor answers that question beautifully. It's a masterfully constructed world. Everything is thought out, and the resistance feels real. The stakes are grounded. And yet, watching it felt like being a child on a playground, being told, hey, it's time to go. Every time you hear that, you look over your shoulder waiting for something to happen. You're still playing. You're still there engaging with your own curiosity. But every moment you hear that voice, it's time to go. You're looking over your shoulder. And yet no one's moving. No one's guiding. No one's actually leaving. That's the tension I felt every time Andor looked over his shoulder. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be waiting for the inevitable to happen or something exciting. And we all know Cassian's fate at the end of Rogue One. So are we just embracing for the inevitable? But the short of it is I don't think we're meant to live like that. I don't think we were built for endings. We were built to imagine beginnings. And I think that is the magic that we have started to lose in Western society. We are by nature creators, not just of things, but of possibilities, futures. And that creativity just doesn't lift us. It lifts people who matter most to us. Yes, there are selfish individuals, but most of the time, they're just lost. They don't need our judgment. They need reflection, refaction, and a little more understanding. Because when we stop waiting for the end, we start building something new. And that's something powerful. The High Republic gave me something I didn't expect. Not just lightsaber duels or galactic politics, but an invitation to ask, what if strength isn't enough to save your soul? Isn't that just absolutely profound? I think that's something everyone thinks about. What if the greatest threat isn't war? The quiet erosion of your light? Elzar Mann, Avar Kriss, Buryaga, Bel Zettifar, these are all characters from the High Republic books and comics. They each faced moments where courage failed them in dramatic fashion, where the Force no longer felt like a gift but a burden, or in some cases a mirror that showed them things that they were not yet ready to see. And then came along the Nameless. Beings not of darkness, but of absence. They didn't just attack the body, they fed on the soul. They consumed faith, unravel clarity, and blind the most spiritually grounded. Imagine being locked in a dark room. You know where the exit is, you're given a flashlight, but you don't know which direction is up, down, left, or right. You know the exit is there, but you just don't know if you'll ever find it. That's what the High Republic dared to do, and dared to explore. Not a galaxy ruled by evil, but a galaxy haunted by confusion, by survival instinct, and raw fear of not being enough. It's not a story about who wins. It's a story about who remembers who they are when the light goes out. And I believe that's the story we're in today. That's our society. And because whether it's Bazi astrology, Christianity, Buddhism, any other ancestral tradition, doesn't even matter if it's any of the Islamic faiths, all of them point to one truth. We are never isolated. We never were. Even if you never meet somebody face to face, your choices, your kindness, your honesty ripple outward through the galaxy. Every soul leaves fingerprints on this galaxy, whether you're in Coruscant or in the concrete jungle of Earth. We are starlight refracted through culture, memory, and love. And that's why stories like the High Republic matter, because they remind us that the Force, whether you call it that or the Spirit of God, the problem with fandom, and especially toxic corners of the Star Wars community, is that they mistake their fear for truth. They shout about canon, tradition, and how things used to be. But what they're really saying is, I'm scared to let go of the past. Scared to evolve and scared to imagine a galaxy that doesn't revolve around them. And that fear doesn't just live online. It shapes our world. In American politics, that fear becomes economic isolation, punishing China through sanctions without acknowledging the millions of people, not governments, who at the end of the day are the ones who will suffer the most. In Europe, it becomes fragility through ecological collapse, looming beneath bureaucracies that can't adapt fast enough. And then in Africa, it's drought, rainless years, maybe even decades. In Australia, it shows up in distance, in a disconnection from a world that once felt navigable. In New Zealand, it's something even more subtle, a quiet confusion about how to find peace with the wonder you're surrounded by and how to belong in it. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, because something profound is starting to happen, and it's happening in Latin America. The collapse of old governments has made room for raw, deeply spiritual and reawakening of connection, belief, and possibility. Even with the chaos, something miraculous is arising from those ashes. The same patterns we We see those same patterns in fandom and in geopolitics. Conservatism isn't just tradition, it's fear of what happens if they let go or lose control. And control always comes with a cost. Fear-based conservatism doesn't just want to preserve the past, it wants to protect it from the progress. It wants to build walls around tradition, not because tradition is sacred, but because evolution is terrifying. Protectionism says, if I keep new out, I'll be safe. Conservatism says, if I silence the different, I'll stay in control. But what they both fail to tell you is that they're both lies. And every time we choose fear over curiosity, we're letting the galaxy, the world, get smaller. We punish imagination, we pass on spiritual poverty to the next generation, and it's dressed up in nostalgia and policy. Yet we forget the truth that every faith, every story, every cosmic philosophy has tried to teach us. There's no safety in stagnation. There is no future without transformation. All of these things are harmful. Not just in little minute ways, but in deeply profound ways that impact all of us. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm building the Platypus Playground. That's why I renamed it. This is the beginning of something new, and it's definitely not perfect. It's a space where we can talk about logic, we can talk about philosophy, and a place where you don't have to choose between being strong, powerful, and vulnerable. Because when you create a space for curiosity, we win. Because joy has no age limit, and neither does hope. At least that's what Luke Skywalker tried to teach us. Age is just a number. People spend their lives being defined by what others perceive of them. But what if it's time to discard old labels? What if it's time to retire the word disability? Stop pathologizing difference and realize that every perspective is valid, even if it comes from a brain that works incredibly different than yours. It's not the people who are broken, it's the system. And maybe it's time we stopped fixing people and started fixing our systemic frameworks.